Sir, you are going to be on the news. Absolutely.
Because you think you're being
Sir,
a victim.
Sir, I got the first time and I got this time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All the other times also.
Sir, don't worry. Don't worry. You Montreal police have a problem.
Yeah.
You guys have a problem. Absolutely. Absolutely. Sir, you guys have a problem.
You're not complying to the road safety.
You guys have a problem. That officer stopped me 4 times in 4 months under the Quebec Highway Traffic Code. On the last occasion, he wore a name tag different from the one he wore on the first 3 prior stops. My eyes fixated on his new name tag caused the officer's eyes to drop to his name tag. I've never seen him since. The legal scrutiny he subjected me to would legally render inoperable 95% of all bikes on Montreal streets at any given time. He detained and interrogated me, questioned my country of origin, demanded as if I was in a kennel my, quote, papers, and issuing a threat to assure my compliance, he ordered me to empty the contents of my bag onto the road. Now who is going to believe a visible minority that this officer's high-handed misconduct occurred without evidence? He stopped me 4 times. That won't be a problem. Institutional racism, also known as systemic racism, is a form of racism expressed in the practice of social and political institutions. It is reflected in disparities regarding wealth, income, criminal justice, employment, housing, healthcare, political power, and education, among other factors. Systemic racism occurs when government actions fail to address the needs of certain racialized groups within the population, resulting in unfair, discriminatory practices and outcomes. When the term institutional racism is used, this is the social and political institution structure the experts are referring to. Question: what does institutional racism look like in Quebec? Hydro-Quebec, 20,000 employees, 312 are minorities. Quebec's Liquor Commission, Société des Alcools du Québec, 6,000 employees, 38 are minorities. 500 judges in Quebec, 3 are minorities. Hello, my name is Andrew Simon, and I am a whistleblower. On October 18th, 2017, Quebec canceled its systemic racism consultations. In the public's interest, I am sharing with you my experience of institutional racism in Quebec. You Montreal police have a problem.
Yeah.
They sure do. The Quebec Liberal Party on December 5, 2017 replaced the systemic discrimination consultation with the valorization of diversity and the fight against discrimination forum. That same day, it was reported that Quebec's former justice minister would recommend that Montreal's police chief, Philippe Pichet, be removed. Quebec's security minister concluded there was widespread systemic malignancies in Montreal police's internal affairs. The justice minister's report said criminal allegations against Montreal police officers were not reported and investigated. Internal Affairs gave preferential treatment to officers alleged to have engaged in misconduct. Montreal police intentionally sabotaged investigations and destroyed evidence to help officers' disciplinary procedures. While preparing this presentation, I have come to a new understanding of what institutional racism is. It's an institutional administrator's refusal to answer the easy question. Let me put the Justice Minister's findings in real-life terms. In January 2018, 2 Montreal police officers pointing their guns at me walked slowly up the stairs, yelling for me to drop my hammer. Blood dripping from my head, glass mixed with blood covered the corridor floor. Their guns looked like toys. I was exhausted. I slowly put the hammer down and I was handcuffed. No officers asked me for my version of events. I was immediately taken to the hospital under arrest. After the doctor finished, I then waited in a police cruiser with 2 officers until the investigator determined who was the aggressor. Several cameras, one facing my door, the investigator determined that I was the victim defending myself. The police officers took my statement at the police station. That January 2018 morning, my door shook violently. That was not the first time. I was unsure if the tremor originated from the apartment below, where the former concierge lived, or at the front door itself. I grabbed a hammer and walked to my front door. The banging stopped. I opened my front door, and which I later found out to be a heavy lead crystal ashtray was thrown into my face. A violent fight ensued, resulting in blood, injuries, and a 911 call from a witness, all caught on camera directly at my front door. This time, the Montreal police had no other alternative but to take my report. Easy question. Is Montreal Police's refusal to document my violent crime complaints an example of their systemic corruption? Should be answerable. I first made a complaint to the police about the former concierge selling drugs like cotton candy at the country fair from his balcony and his marijuana smoke entering my apartment. The Montreal Police told me that they were aware of the flagrant drug dealing and suggested that I file a Regie de Logement complaint for the marijuana smoke entering my apartment. Shortly after the police left, my floor was being banged on from below, marijuana smoke was entering my apartment as if I was smoking it on my sofa. That's when I started to complain to management about the building's ventilation system. Then my hot water started to be turned off. As the Montreal Police suggested, I started to document the drug activities from my Regie de Logement complaint. The former concierge's roommate spat in my face, so I went to the police to make a report. The Montreal Police's response was not what I expected. She behaved as if I was taking food out of her mouth. It wasn't in her realm of comprehension to even consider that I pushed record on my phone. You listen. Here you are, Montreal Police, Volume 1, Miscongeniality.
If you fill out a sentences, it's gonna stop, okay? Because it's only spinning. Are you listening to me? Or you're texting?
I'm listening to you.
Okay. So what do you want to do with that? What's your objective?
My objective is to file a complaint. I have it on video of him spitting at me, and I have video of them smoking weed on their
Why didn't you call the police yesterday?
Because you guys were debating the same thing. It's not an emergency. Come in and make a complaint. So I'm coming.
Because right now we're not here, so we cannot arrest him.
Okay. So what should I do?
You should have called us yesterday.
I have it on video.
Okay? But who is this guy?
I have his
You
license plate
understand?
number. I have his license plate number, and he's lives in the building below me. With the guy.
Okay, so now you want to press charge and you're gonna see him every day. Do you think it's gonna be better for you? When he's gonna know that you press charge against him? Do you think it's gonna be good for you?
Ma'am, I'd like to press charges.
I'm just gonna go nowhere. It's alright.
Why are you so angry?
I'm not angry. You're yelling at me. Okay,
I'm not
I asked you two times to lower I asked you 2 times to lower your voice, okay? But you don't seem to understand what happened, okay? I told you that you should call 911 yesterday because yesterday.
Why are you yelling at me?
Hey, you're not listening to me?
I am yelling.
Okay, now because I'm talking and you keep continuing to say, why are you yelling? You know?
Why are you yelling at me? I'm just coming to make a complaint.
Yeah, I'm explaining to you that the complaint, that it will go nowhere.
Why is that?
Because it's only spinning and you film it. You take picture of it. You make a video of them.
Yeah.
You put yourself into a bad situation, okay? And now they spit at you, and now you want to press charge against him. And we don't know who this guy is. And when we're gonna find him, the investigator is gonna see that, and he's gonna say, he's gonna close the file. He's not gonna pursue, you know?
Okay.
So even if you insist, because you insist, I'm gonna give you the sentence.
Yeah.
But the investigation is gonna close your file.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to go to the press and say that that this is unacceptable. I will
You
go.
threat with the press?
You consider that a threat?
But why you say that you're gonna go in the press?
You consider that a threat? Why is that a threat?
Give me your phone. Because you insist, I'm gonna give you the sentence.
Yeah.
But the investigation is gonna close your file.
Okay. That was Montreal Police's typical gross responses. I was required to get the video before they will accept to write an incident report. I must provide them the name of the person who committed the criminal infraction, or they review the security camera footage and it shows nothing as to what I alleged. That was my landlord's response too. My door was smashed on more than one occasion to the point where it was unable to be opened and the security cameras never showed who did it. In fact, my landlord told me the next time my door got vandalized, I would have to pay for the repairs. Easy question. Why are the Montreal Police and my landlord stating as fact that the building's security cameras never recorded anyone vandalizing my door? Should be answerable. Which begs the obvious question, what procedural policy agreement do the Montreal Police and my landlord have that permits the Montreal Police to roll up anytime they wish and access private residential security footage, thereby, absent any agreement, violate privacy rights? Should be answerable.
But you just told me he's going to throw it in the garbage.
No, I did not. He's gonna. That's not my word. Don't put word in my mouth. I said that he's gonna close the file.
True to form, consistent with Montreal Police's refusal to take the former concierge's and his roommate's violent acts seriously, the concierge's January 2018 assault also went nowhere. In September 2018, Quebec's Ministry of Justice sent me a subpoena requiring me to appear as a witness for a pretrial hearing against my building's former concierge's January 2018 assault. Montreal Police told me to wait in the waiting area outside the courtroom. Montreal Police told me that if the judge requires me to give evidence during the pretrial hearing, I will be called into the courtroom. Montreal Police told me that I was not to leave the courthouse until they officially released me after the pretrial hearing had completed. I waited in the courthouse waiting room all morning. Lunch passed, then 4 p.m. arrived. Montreal Police did not come to provide me with follow-up information. Finally, full of frustration, I asked the courtroom security guard to please inquire what is happening with the former concierge's assault case. The courtroom security guard came back and told me that the concierge's pretrial hearing ended in the morning. Montreal Police left me, a person they decided was a crime victim, waiting in the courthouse all day, abandoned. Then, in February 2019, Quebec's Crime Victims Association Center sent me a notice that the assault case against the former concierge was thrown out because of an unreasonable delay. Unreasonable delay? What constituted an unreasonable delay in these circumstances? All the evidence against the former concierge consisted of my victim statement and the security footage of the assault. Since the January 2018 assault, Montreal Police never requested further details from me. In September 2018, Montreal Police would not respond to my questions about whether they had the security footage of the assault in their possession. All Montreal Police would tell me is they think so, they don't know. Then I, the so-called victim, was abandoned without a word in a courthouse while they, the police, lawyers, and the defendant went home. You may not like me, but I am an example of how Quebec institutions may next treat someone you care for. What type of messenger are you, the victims of institutional racism, waiting for? An unblemished person concerned with keeping up with the Joneses, who's uninterested in disturbing their gravy train? Easy question. Why the unreasonable delay? Here's my guess. The former concierge had leverage. When we least expect it, the answers come. Recently, my landlord asked me to sign a piece of paper that changed the terms of my lease. I said, write me up a new lease. He refused. My landlord demanded that I sign this amendment to my lease or return it to him. He told me that he has to give the amendment to my lease to the City of Montreal. The City of Montreal is an owner of this building, which makes me think of blatant drug dealing in front of security cameras, disappearing videotapes, and a fraudulent ventilation system. That's how the former concierge knew to fill my apartment with marijuana smoke. Easy question. Who directed the former concierge to drywall and paint over all these defects? All prettied up, and slowly over time the walls are cracking, recirculated building air, and in the summer the stale, stagnant smell of water in the air. To my landlord and the City of Montreal, this is your public notice. You are going to come here and document with pictures and videos my complaints. You are going to open up these water-stained walls. You're going to apply the procedures you allege you apply. You are going to answer every question in writing. Since apparently you're my landlord, Montreal Inspection, what's this vent connected to? That question's for Ministry of Health too. For you to understand the basis of my frustration, let me put that in real-life terms. In 2016, I made a complaint to the City of Montreal's inspection department against my past landlord. I live next door to this landlord in his, as reported, personally designed architectural marvel. When his children ran or when furniture was dragged in their dwelling, my floor shook. Each footstep sounded like a bomb traveling the crawl space going off in my apartment. The inspector who arrived at my apartment crouched on his haunches for less than a minute and told me the floor was within building code regulations. I said to myself, what's this? The City of Montreal thinks I fell off the turnip truck. Months later, I requested another structural inspection, and this time a health inspection because mold was coming into my apartment through the crawl space. The City of Montreal sent me 2 novice health inspectors to perform a structural inspection and a health inspection. I don't recall some of the events in the report as having taken place. The City of Montreal's inspection report makes no mention mention of performing a structural inspection. It makes no mention of a crawl space. And it blamed me for mold proliferation for not using the bathroom fan. I missed that part. The City of Montreal said I should clean up the mold or be fined. You see these two emails? They're for the City of Montreal's customized support for real estate projects. The bottom email is for inspections and the top one is for the City of Montreal Ville Marie's Planning and Advisory Committee. In 2015, my then landlord was nominated to be a member on this committee. With that said, the City of Montreal can clear up in seconds as to why their inspection report does not explain how my bathroom fan caused mold proliferation. Section 92 of Quebec's public health law mandates that health inspectors notify their local director of public health of any health threats. Good enough to write a report that I caused mold proliferation, good enough to follow the law. You can send me a notarized copy of that report your inspector sent to the public health director at Santé Montreal. I also demand forthwith a detailed account from the City of Montreal as to why you allege there was never any videos when my door was being vandalized or threats made at my front door. That's to include all police reports and investigations. You may not think this is institutional racism, but I say something's not right. Quebec's social institutions have an underground communication line. Its sole purpose is to protect their personal interests. Example, one time when my door was vandalized, I had to call 911 twice. During the second call, the operator told me that the police were not coming to my home.
We don't have to go and see, you have to show us.
So you guys are not going to come and take pictures of any of this?
No, it's written here that the police is not going to come.
But they came anyways. Apparently they had some spare time.
On pensait que vous étiez embarrés. Mon Dieu, on est arrivé tellement vite pour venir vous sauver.
I think I understood. Let me...
Est-ce que vous parlez français?
Well...
Parce qu'on est tous... Il y a poste de police déjà fait un rapport de police. OK, puis on est tous vraiment mauvais en anglais.
Alright, so I guess we're not going to go anywhere then. So no one speaks English?
Pour moi, c'est comme du chinois.
Alright.
Tu parles pas du tout français?
Very Terry.
Easy question. Who made the decision not to send Montreal police to my home? Who made the decision for the Montreal police officers to come to my home? Under what legal authorities did those Montreal police officers have the legal right to refuse me a statutory service? From where are these social institutions getting their confidence from to arbitrarily apply some of the law to some of the people some of the time? What's the motivation? Who's the beneficiary? That's my thesis because that's my experience. Police pulling me over because they had some spare time. Customers believing Law 101 justified their prejudices, repeatedly reminding me of my place on the lower rung of the hierarchy. My employer's racist comments telling me that I needed to be considerate of these customers with disposable income. My attempts to address my employer's refusal to apply the law to my workplace complaints. They ended up in a pit by these institutions, selectively applying the law, and I said to myself, who is going to believe me if I don't start documenting this behavior? Surely not them. I experienced Quebec's institutional underground communication line when I tried to hold my employer Secrecy accountable for refusing to respond to my workplace psychological harassment complaints. I went to my union, QIIT, to have them enforce the collective agreement. QIIT provided me with nothing but a profound contradiction of human rights law.
What circumstances did come up? I'm just trying to grab the you know.
Ouais, non, je pense que c'était simplement parce que je me suis trompé avec les suspensions, mais c'est simplement qu'il mentionnait qu'il était agressif, puis qu'il y avait de la misère à communiquer.
I think we told him that you were aggressive and that you had a problem explaining yourself.
In
a general manner.
In a general manner, but I'm just trying to wonder. Did Luke just say, let's discuss Laurent, and then, by the way, I have this problem? Is that the way it
Yes,
is?
yes.
And how long did the conversation last for?
Combien de temps que la conversation a duré?
Pour Laurent, 20 minutes.
No, about me.
Ouais, c'est ça. For Laurent, it's 20 minutes. For you, it's 1 minute.
1 minute of conversation?
Yeah, yes, because when I talk with you, I remember something. Just to say, well, yeah, but by the way, Andrew, we have a problem because he's aggressive sometimes, and we have difficulty to communicate with him, and If that is for that, I don't call you because
No, but you hear that very often. Whenever we do this, and the employers might say things, but there's never a second step to it.
Did Luke tell you the circumstances why I may be aggressive?
No,
He didn't give you any examples?
non. C'est pour ça que.
Did he give you
That's why I didn't call you, so
All right.
it was out of the blue.
My employer, Luke Palmerville, tells my union representative, Nicola Lemieux, that I'm a violent employee. And then my union tells me, oh, don't worry about it. It was out of the blue, like it was a belch. What did Nicola say? Oh, you want another pop?
There's racism in Quebec, but no systematic racism.
So that your answer
no,
would be no then?
No.
Oh.
At no time, any time, while they were taking my money, did TUAC apply their collective agreement to my circumstances while employed at Super C. When I challenged TUAC lawyer Isabelle Laurent as to why TUAC is not interested in determining why Super C has labeled me a violent employee, she flat out said to me, I didn't understand how the world turns.
I'm trying to understand what is it that he lied about?
It's impossible to go and suspend somebody, another employee, about for the exact for being aggressive, and then Luke says to you, Andrew's aggressive, and that was the end of it. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but
and that's why you went there. You never asked him any questions.
il dit que t'aurais dû aller chercher plus loin pourquoi qu'il disait qu'il était agressif.
You weren't curious whatsoever. It doesn't pass the smell test.
Nobody put a complaint against you, whatever, so it didn't.
But my point is, you're trained in workplace violence. You went there to suspend somebody for being aggressive, whatever that may entail, and then Luke just says to you, Andrew's aggressive, and that was the end of it.
Yeah, but he didn't have anything substantial to do anything, so he doesn't believe in it.
But it just lacks common curiosity.
Okay, well, Andrew,
You know what I'm trying to say?
Andrew, you know how it is. You know how the world turns.
Yeah.
Everybody speaks about everybody. Oh, this person is like this. You cannot listen to everything and try to see if it's really the truth every time.
I think it just lacks. Everybody I've talked to says it doesn't make sense. It lacks common curiosity.
Il dit que t'aurais dû être plus curieux.
You don't even have to be curious.
He says that in all the stores, the police stores, he hears so many shit that every time he hears something, he doesn't go further if he doesn't believe in it.
All right. Okay.
This is before he talked with me. This is alright.
I simply don't believe it. Okay, we'll leave it at that, and you know where I stand now.
You would have liked him to go further and see what is it that you have to complain about.
But that's your job to inquire, and you didn't, and
Yeah, I'm sure you're speechless too.